you're listening to the Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Neil.
Hello.
And by Imogen.
Hello, Joey.
Now then, an international break and an undesirable result have left us feeling a little bit like March was 6 billion years ago, or certainly I have. Is that the same for everybody else?
Definitely upset me. Confused me and upset me.
But I'm reliably informed that it was only last month. So we are going to try and piece it back together if we possibly can. So we'll start in the traditional way with moments of the week. Neil, would you like to kick us off?
So I'm doing moment of the month because the last week hasn't been very nice, really. So, I want to go with the Kyle McFadden goal, actually. And partly because of how good the goal was. Like, he just absolutely ripped it. But secondly, because that was the moment I suddenly thought, we're back in this championship race. I thought the results were kind of looking good. We were going to win that game. Big noises, big money. 3-0 at the time, I think it was. And I got very, very excited from that point onwards. And yeah, that was my moment of the month because I then started doing lots and lots of mathematics to try and figure out just what it might take for us to make the playoffs.
Beautiful. Imogen?
I discovered that karma is a real thing. I couldn't go to the Blackpool game because of the train strikes. And so I cursed Mick Lynch, his family, his friends, his acquaintances. And then he lifted the train strike. So I got to go to Stoke. And that's the end of my very sad story. Yeah. It was a truly debilitating experience. So, yeah, thanks, Mick.
Yeah, that's unlucky. Neil, did you go to Blackpool? Were you able just to watch it?
I was able to watch it. Blackpool is one of those places where I have no interest in going as an away game. I've never been, and it's just on the list of ones. So I've been all over the shop, and I've been Millwall and all these ones which people say, "Oh, it's scary." Millwall's fine. Millwall's lovely. Blackpool,
yeah,
don't want to go. Just not interested. It seems really raucous, and I don't like raucous really. So no, didn't go.
The last time, I'm sure we've talked about this on the podcast, but the last time I went to Blackpool, and I think it was the last time, full stop, was when we beat them 1-0 with a Marc-Antoine Fortuné goal, and it was really, really poor. And I was able to get there early and stay overnight, so it carried on into the night, and drank nothing but Carling the entire day. I would venture, if I had to guess, I would say that we probably went to 7 or 8 different pubs, bars, clubs or whatever. And that was largely, it wasn't a hassle for me. I didn't have to find a place where to keep on the Carling streak. It was very readily available everywhere.
I believe you, yes.
Blackpool. It wasn't a hassle to continue on drinking Carling. And as you can probably tell, one of the best days I've ever had.
Was that the day where you ended up getting nude and taking photos of yourself? Or was that a different one? Have I got that confused?
I missed that one.
You don't even remember this? That's how drunk you were. Yeah, I remember it.
That would have been there was tops off in first class, wasn't there? But we weren't.
Okay.
I wasn't. That wasn't fully nude, and I was staying over in Blackpool, so that was fine.
Okay.
My moment of the week is. I'm going to say my moment of the week is. So I have a Blackpool fan colleague who I get on well with in work, and is a nice gentleman. And when they came to our place and beat us 2-1, we had what I guess you'd describe as kind of, reasonably light-hearted, jovial, but very, very mild. I'm loath to use the word banter, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to go there. And what I've learned about myself is actually that since when we beat them, I had probably 2 weeks of really just non-stop petty, bitter, real, and I didn't know how bad I was, but that's probably the worst I've ever been with another person. I don't think I was able to walk past him once without having to really, really, really drive it home, and it was a shame because, like I say, he was so nice about the reverse fixture, but it was partly it was because of like how bad they were from what I saw of it, and secondly, they'd beat who did they beat in midweek? Was it QPR that they'd beat 6-1 in midweek? He was like, "Oh, I think you might be in trouble this weekend," and then we really, really weren't. But then the next person to say to me, "You might be in trouble this weekend," was my friend who's a Stoke fan, and then that was absolutely my own comeuppance. But this is a lot of 4-goal scoring games. So we conceded 4 against Stoke. We scored 4 against Blackpool, but taking it right back to the start of March, if you can remember that far away, we went to Huddersfield and scored 4 in a 4-0 win, if you can even believe it.
Yeah,
Who would like to start with this, and what are your recollections of it?
Imogen, did you go?
No, I didn't. Probably Mick Lynch's fault, I should think. I did watch it though, and Vic's wonderful. The reaction of Neil Warnock before Vic had even scored, when he saw that Vic had got the ball and was through on goal, and he just threw up his arms. You thought, oh, it's going to be a great day, isn't it?
Was that wanky mistake by their defender?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
First one,
Yeah.
Oh, God. This is
and
something
they
we
looked.
do.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they looked miserable, didn't they, Huddersfield?
Yeah,
So
they were.
It was a wonderful day for us.
Really, they were really bad, and it's that mistake that they made to give it on a plate to Gyökeres was so bad that even Gyökeres couldn't fuck it up, because when he latched onto it, I was like, oh, come on, please don't Gyökeres this. But then even he was like,
He really didn't, did he? It was a great finish. Where's that been for the last 2 years? 1-on-1s. Why can't he just do that all the time? I know he scored 18 goals this season, but I think we all agree that his 1-on-1 ratio could be a bit better.
It's an incredibly fabulous position to be able to take on a player that has single-handedly scored all of our goals and done all of our attacking. You can be like, just feel like he misses a few too easy chances. Yeah.
It's like Mark the other day when his. Sorry, go on.
No, you.
I was just going to say, when Mark the other day said in his post-match, he's like, well, yeah, Victor's still got a lot to learn. There's still a lot he can improve in his game. Right, Mark, come on. No one's falling for this. We know he's going. You've got a price tag.
There's a lot of knowing sideways glances between Jamie Allen and Mark Robbins as another through ball is missed by Gyökeres because of a lack of concentration. A lot of eye rolls between Michael Rose as another attack is competently shepherded away in training. You'll get there one day, Vic. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Just stay patient.
Stick with us.
The course.
Stick with us. We know what we're doing.
Yeah. Does anyone think there's even a remote chance that he'll stay? You've both drank the Kool-Aid, haven't you?
Look, if we go up.
Hang on a second. Neil has drank some very bad broadband Kool-Aid. I think he's back with us. Go on. Do you think that Vic will stay with us, Neil?
So there is the only one way, and that is if we get promoted. So let's say that happens, and then if we get promoted, and then Douglas puts his hand in his pockets, and also nobody is willing to spend the big bucks on him. Everybody comes in with £8 million bids or stuff, and it just doesn't quite work for us. That is the only way, and even then, I don't think it's going to happen because I think he's pretty set on finding his big money, isn't he? He's taking his big move in the summer, but it's just going to be a lame team, It's just going to be who's the lamest option. Like Leeds, if they just about stay up. Oh, no, that's quite cool, actually. Sometimes I don't know. One of those lamos in the bottom half.
The worry for me is that he does something like Southampton get relegated and he joins Southampton. Do you know what I mean? Like they spend their money making sure they go back up or something. Or that Middlesbrough get promoted, which is almost certain, I think, now. And then he goes to Middlesbrough, who are desperate for him. And you're just like, come on. But really, what I want to see is for him to go to Everton. That would be, if Everton stay up, it would be fascinating to see whether he could, because we were joking about this earlier, that Everton were able to have Carlo Ancelotti, who I think you could argue possibly the best manager of all time, or certainly the most successful manager of all time, and he couldn't do anything. But my faith in Vic is such that I think he might be the man to sort of turn the whole club around.
I have a completely different view of it. I think he can only cope. I think he can only cope if he's the absolute main man. And
but you know, I think that Vic and Dyche, for that reason, is absolutely is unreal. Is that would be completely the game plan?
Give him all the reins, like Vic, do everything. I can imagine that he would love. He would love. But I watched him a couple of times for Sweden, and he is a different player for them in a different. It's just he's just not obviously. He knows he's our best player or our biggest player and the man with all the reputation. So you can see that on the pitch now. He's showing that more and more. But for them, he's definitely not the guy with the big reputation. So there's no whinging, there's no sort of stopping, and there's also no vibrant taking the ball and running past everybody he can kind of approach to play. It's very sensible football. Now, I think in the future, if he moves to a team, can he be? The only reason he looks good for us really is because he's that individual, isn't it? It's not his best play, is it? He only looks good because he's able to do all this stuff by himself. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens if he goes to a team and he isn't given the license to be the main man. I just have thoughts on that. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe he'll just get really confident again and do loads, but I'm not sure. I think we're the best.
He may also need to be indulged as well. Mark obviously adores him, so if he goes somewhere where he's just another player, maybe he feels less loved.
It will break my heart if I see him go somewhere and be part of a system. I'm not interested in that whatsoever. I want to see him pass a ball or or make an off the ball run for somebody else. It's going to be horrendous.
Why he's got to stay. We're the only ones who can give him that.
You do wonder whether there must be a bit of you in your head where you're like, this is the one club that is literally just going to be like, you tell me, you just do whatever you want.
Tell me, yeah. Whatever you want, Vic. Yeah.
What would you like?
Have a go at the 18-year-old? Yeah, go on. He's all yours. Yeah.
Right. You nearly get sent off a few times. Don't worry about it. I mean, I've basically castrated Hamer for doing the same thing. If you want to just kick someone, that's all right. We don't worry about that.
Get out your system, yeah.
Can we move on to something like ever so slightly tangential because you've mentioned it there, Neil? Right. You said if we get promoted.
Yeah. That's not tangential. That's absolutely on the money.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, we are in a football season at the moment, Joseph, and we have 7 games left, and we're 4 points off the playoff. So if we get 4 points more than any of the teams, well, Millwall or Blackburn, we might be in the playoffs, and that means we might get promoted.
Would you care to put a percentage on that?
Oh, I've done all the numbers, but I'm not mad. I'm not gonna put it out there, am I? But I had a whole thing set up. I worked out. Once we got to 8 games to go, I worked out absolutely everything. I worked out what 8 game points per game were for the whole season and all this sort of shit, and just working out, are we good or are we accidentally good? And since October, I'm sorry to say this, we are good. We are good for a very, very long time. Now, I have a problem here. We lost to Stoke and we didn't look good. So I'm trying to work out whether that is the version of us now that I have to worry about, or everything that we've done before is a bit. So I'm a little bit confused about us at the moment because we lost 4-0 to Stoke and looked far inferior to them. But also, I haven't given up. Definitely, why would I give up anyway? We're the closest team other than the ones in it to get in there. Can't give up just yet, can we? Surely.
So a percentage?
I don't do public percentages. It's all in my spreadsheet, Joey.
What would you say without a percentage? How would you describe the likelihood?
Do you want a percentage, Joey? I don't know. The likelihood is, look, how many games we've got left now? 7 games to go.
7
games.
So if we win of that, 4 of those games and get a draw or something, and Millwall win 2 of those games and have a couple of draws, we're with them. But my issue isn't so much working out the overall number. My issue is getting to within 3 points by the last game of the season to at least give us a chance, and then I'll be happy. That's kind of all. I'd love to have a little shot in the last game of the season.
Well, the thing
doesn't it
thing
hurt
is for
more?
me, in fact,
Nah. It hurts more when people don't care.
I'd rather be out of it. I'd rather either be in it or out of it. So I think if we're
You've
going
been
to be
saying we're out of it since October, and it's like, come on, Joey,
Well,
get with the program.
Joey's been
but I think
predicting
you're making
relegation
an
for most of the season.
I still don't think we're beyond it. I think it could easily happen. Imogen, what would you put as a percent? Give us a percentage of likelihood according to you.
I'm not being lured into your game. I would have liked to have seen us promoted. Shock horror. But
Okay.
having seen us against Stoke, I can't sit through that next year. I can't. It was too painful. It's miserable. And you forget when you're playing well how good it can be, and how bad it can be rather. And you go back up there and you sit in the cold and you're being pummeled by fucking, I don't know, Leicester. You don't want that. No one wants that. I think we stay where we are. I don't like change. We stay where we are, where we're safe.
Well, I had a big whinge, as I want to do, on Twitter earlier about the fact that I've bought a Watford ticket and the standard price ticket for that game is £33.
Oh, that's shit, isn't it?
That could be as high as
So,
£35 in the Premier League, couldn't it?
It's outrageous.
But genuinely though, I just think it's, I don't know. Somebody said, "Oh, you could pay that for a theatre ticket," but you probably would enjoy going to the theatre. And I also think you're probably getting more than 2 hours, well, 90 minutes with extra stuff of entertainment for that money. And I also think there's not 30,000, well, 20,000 people packed into the Belgrade. So I don't know whether it's like, I know football is expensive and running football is expensive, but I just think I think it's a bit silly. And I think whilst we might sort of, I genuinely, I'm not sure whether I would really want to. I like, you want the club to be successful. I don't think I'd enjoy supporting them in the Premier League.
Yeah, I get it's more stuff here. It's the journey. That I
Yeah.
like. I like
That's
the
the
excitement of making it, and then obviously when you're there.
No, but you're absolutely 100% true. Is you the whole point is about being as successful as you can, isn't it? And I guess there's precedent from recent times of, there's a lot of teams that have gone up and then been all right, isn't there? I just don't see it being us. I just think we're too low budget and too dysfunctional.
We are currently, aren't we? Yeah. It doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense that we are as good as we are, because I think you're looking at 2 years worth of Championship football now. We don't get battered that often. We are a decent team. We know our points per game have been, we're a really good team, and we're a match for most teams. And last season we battered Fulham twice, not by mistake, but because we were just better than them.
Loads better.
And that can happen, but it's just, you don't know what promotion looks like in terms of, you go up there and obviously they call it the £90 million game and all that nonsense, but you just see 90 million straight off. I don't think that's kind of how it works. Or you could do a Forest and just spend a load of money on a load of players and you lose the absolute core of what you are. So, but it doesn't stop me from, I don't want to wish my life away. And if there's an opportunity to do something big, like, I wouldn't mind it, even for a season. It's better than just ambling around, I think, anyway.
We also become the club that people know about, people talk about, people have an opinion on Cov. When I say to people where I live that I support Cov, it's sort of patronising. Oh, yeah. And they'll say something like, they'll have some kind of verbal diarrhea about, depending on their age, Dion Dublin, Rico Arena. Yeah. Oh, so you're playing at Sixfields now. And I like the martyrdom that comes with being a lower league team, and the idea that I go to games because I'm not priced out of them, and I can still look down on all the Arsenal fans who don't go because it's too expensive. But the actual reason is they're just too lazy and they're on TV all the time. Yeah, they're not going to go. I would miss that. But the Prem's the dream, isn't it? It's a difficult one. But I don't think we'll be there for long if we are.
I think it would be cute to see us on Match of the Day.
But you've seen us on Match of the Day before.
I know, but it's not the same, is it? I was young. I had dreams back then.
Okay. Impressionable.
Okay. Well, okay. So you won't be drawn on whether you think we will definitely go up. It's just, all I was going to say to you is if we can get through the Swansea game, which obviously is very tricky, is it does feel like Watford, and I'm going to check the form table as I'm saying this because I think this is probably wrong.
No, they're on a bad run, aren't they?
They're not. Yeah, I think they are on the sort of on an upswing, but it's at the very early stages of it under Wilder. And then if you look, what we have then immediately afterwards is it's QPR, who my sources tell me are not in the greatest form. Blackburn away, who I think in the playoffs at least, where everyone is roughly speaking in form, are the team that are dropping off a little bit. and then Reading at home and Birmingham at home, who aren't exactly, and I'm going to use the phrase great shakes. And finally, I don't know about the rest of yous, but I think with the way that Sheffield United's trajectory is and Middlesbrough's trajectory is, I'm quite pleased at how I said trajectory there. I think Middlesbrough might be done by the time they come to play us.
So do I.
It's pick your portion of form, isn't it? Like you can say the last 2 games, like Swansea, 2 in a row, they're excellent. You pick the last 4 games, and pick the last 8 games, 12 games. Depending on what you're looking at, there, everybody's got a different kind of story. And like Middlesbrough are an interesting one, aren't they? They've just lost 4-2 to Huddersfield, and the question there is, how do they react to that? Does that knock them? Because confidence is a hell of a big thing, especially when you're Super Appung and you not necessarily, you've never been that good, and then suddenly you are good. I imagine. I reckon confidence has got something to do with that. So, I that's why I don't want to predict, because I thought we were in the form of our lives and we played Stoke, and just because they won a couple, that wouldn't make a difference, and then they absolutely smashed us, and I just don't know what that means. And like same goes for Swansea. We never do well at Swansea, do we? And yet. We just lost 4-0, so everything suggests that you're never going to win that game. And yet, I like to remind myself that when we lost to Luton 5-0, we went and beat Fulham the next week. And these things.
Yeovil.
We drew the game after that actually, so it wasn't quite the same. But it's not a definitive form thing where if you've won and you're in good form, it's going to work for you. At some point, it will stop, and whether that's 3 games or 5 games or whatever.
We drew against Wigan. And Wigan are horrendous.
Yeah,
like I don't think I'm not sure that losing at home against Stoke is, if you have a sort of like a golf handicap style system, whether that is so much worse than the draw against Wigan, who were absolutely hopeless. But like you say, it's in the context of everything, and I just don't think you can look at the problem is because we had it directly after an international break. And every break that we've had this season, it's like someone's pulled the plug out of the club and then reset it completely differently. Either we've started and it's made a big positive impact or a big negative impact. Is that it's, you sort of look at it now and go, oh God, which cov will turn up next week?
And that's exactly isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's. I'm not really sure this time round that has much bearing on it at all. I think it's going to be more down to. I think there will be some element of it, which is that we don't travel to Swansea well, and we can say that has no bearing on anything. But then I would say, well, why have we not won at Preston for 5 million years? But also, I think we could probably go there and draw, and then if we beat Watford, Blackburn, Watford, QPR, Reading, Birmingham, and get a draw against Blackburn, why are we not in the playoffs? Like,
we won't get a draw against Blackburn. They don't draw.
Is that right?
They've only drawn about 4.
They've drawn 4, a league low 4 games. That's actual knowledge.
Thank you. There's no need to sound quite that surprised, Joe.
It's largely when we have knowledge, it's because Dom's here. But Dom's not here.
We've never been seen in the same room.
Oh, well, clearly, yeah. Okay, well, I really want to. I can't believe that neither of you are taking the bait here, because as far as I'm concerned, guys, we're going up.
Yeah, that's definitely something you would say, isn't it?
Promotion.
I don't think I've ever made a prediction, have I? I don't believe
promotion
in them.
Promotion is basically confirmed.
Brilliant.
Reading are in 20th, QPR are in 18th, and are just vile. They've lost 4 of their last 5. Then
okay, so who are we beating in the playoffs?
Well, hang on a second. Well, no, I did just say that we got up. I was going to say I didn't say we'd go up. That's exactly what I said. I mean, obviously, I don't even believe my own bullshit. What I want is for one of you two now to say, yeah, we could go up, so that I can go. There's absolutely no way that we're going to go up. I don't know, because I think. Well, look. So we'd finish 6th. Here, I'm going to try and pretend that this is what I believe. We would finish 6th if we finish in the playoffs. Yeah. And if we finish in the playoffs, it's almost certain that Middlesbrough go. Well, I think Middlesbrough go up and Sheffield United land in 3rd. And so we do what we did when we went up from League 2, which is we play the team that you don't want in the semis, but the team that possibly is not in the greatest run of form. And so we somehow magically go to Bramall Lane and get something, which doesn't happen terribly often. But we get a draw, and then we take it back to the Rico, and that we win 8-0.
Correct.
And then we've got potential. We've got Luton or Millwall probably.
Well, it'll be Luton, and we don't win at Luton.
But we
No,
won't
we
beat
won't
Luton.
we
We'll
won't
be
beat
at
Luton.
Wembley. We'll be at Wembley.
I think Luton
We don't
finished,
beat Luton.
I think Luton
Well, but
finished third.
But we've not.
Do
but we've not.
you?
What
Neil,
I
speak
do-
more on that.
They're good. They're really good, and they're not.
Brilliant.
They're not. I mean, that classic. Like, you know, this is what we do on this show. But they are good.
I think they're good.
I also want to say they're good. Yeah, they're just like proper good. That's all I have to say. Really.
Our friends over at the Second Tier podcast predicted them to go up automatically, which again was like I don't know whether they're doing it on purpose. I sometimes go on there because they're very nice and that they make things very easy to go on there. And it's Ryan who does it that I really like. He's just a lovely lad. And that I don't get the impression that they're being deliberately antagonistic. I really think they think the things genuinely. I think they think that they're their opinions. I don't think they're doing them just for show, but they have a really good niche for saying things that just really flame.
But there's a problem. The way they do it is because none of the things that they say correlate with the other things that they say. So everything just contradicts everything else. They're like, oh, well, these are going up. Well, they can't all go up. You've got to pick a lane. Like, you just every time somebody wins, it's like, oh, we're going up. Like, oh, okay, that's today's.
You get a promotion, and you get a promotion.
I do think. Go on, Imogen.
Well, I don't want Luton to go up because would we be? I feel like neither of you are going to know this, but maybe Paul or Dom would know.
Sorry.
Would we be the first? Would we be the first team to have gone from the Premier League down to League Two and back again? Now I know Luton were never they went down the season before the Prem, but I don't want them to take that crown. I can't think of another team that's done it.
It's a really
we
good
would
question.
be the first. We would be. There's teams that have come up from the League Two, and there's been a few examples of that, but I can't think of any. Like, have to go back.
Bradford haven't come back since the last time they were in the Premier League.
A lot of them have plummeted, but coming all the way back again.
Forest only went Div 1.
Hang on a second. Would Man City only went down to League 1, I suppose?
They only went down to League 1. Yeah.
No, I can only think of one way. I can't think of back and down. That's a good question. We'll figure that one out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
speaking of good quiz questions, yeah, if anybody's got any, that would be great to know because later we're going to do a very bad quiz. Right. Okay. So you two think that promotion is an absolute cast iron certainty. I would say it's probably not as simple as that. I think there's probably a lot of games to go between now and the end of the season. But let's have a look at the rest of March if we should. So we've talked a little bit there about Wigan and the fact that wasn't as we expected it to go. Does anyone have any thoughts or insight, or do we care about Wigan?
No. They look quite good, actually.
Do you think at the end of the season anybody will be able to tell the difference between the draw against Hull and the draw against Wigan?
No.
I'd forgotten we drew on against Hull and I was there. I don't remember that game at all.
It was just a similar vibe where we both thought we were superior to both of them, and
yeah,
they just.
It was nice, however, to rescue a point from a losing position, which is not something that we've sort of reverted to type. In that, if we go behind, I don't think we've been terribly good at doing anything about it. In the context of last season, where we had really bucked the trend and done something, I think it was nice at least that we were able to get back into that game and get something from it. But apart from that, it was not great.
And Oscar about that as well.
Oscar Estupinian has scored a quarter of his goals, I think, this season against us.
Yeah.
I thought at the start of the season, I was like, he looks like a good player, and then I think he stopped scoring after this hat-trick against us, and then just popped up again for another one.
The thing is, I saw him with that hat-trick against us, and I thought, he doesn't look like a good player. We're just giving him all the goals from 1 year out. And it was so bad. I've never seen a hat-trick of such cumulative yards. It was about 3 yards altogether. It was rubbish.
Speaking of which, where do you think Godden fits in at the moment? So he scored the equaliser in this game. Now, Paul and I had... I wish he was here so that we could do this properly, because I could only do it via the medium of text. Paul for a start, described Godden as not a natural goal scorer, and then
Paul
went on
said
to
that.
say, yeah, and went
Paul
on to say, then went on to say that he basically had no like purpose or ability. Almost what's. I wondered if you two had got any reflections on on a guy that I would build a statue for.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I might have a plaque for him, maybe. He Mark likes him. This is the first thing you have to understand. Like, Mark has certain things that he wants to do in the team, and one thing he doesn't really want to do, if he can help it, is just have Jokeres up it by south, and when we haven't got any attacking midfielders, try and work the team that way. So I think his better option is for the more stable and elderly striker to work alongside him, and that's why Godden's there. Now, I know why Paul doesn't like Godden. There's a few reasons for it. One is that he doesn't seem to do anything during the match when Paul's ever watching. Also, apparently we don't win that many times with Godden in the team, which is interesting because I feel like we do. But I think right now, 7 games ago, if we want to do something and try and win as many games as possible, like, Mark is just going to go with him. Like, it's his striker. It's the guy who he trusts. It's the one who, if he does get a chance 12 yards out, blah, 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 I'd still trust him to put it away over Tyler Walker or someone like that, who is just working his way back into some semblance of form, but it's not really form. It's just getting more involved than he usually does. They're different things. So, yeah, I know Paul has his issues with him, but I personally don't think he works well with Jokeres. I think that's an obvious thing, but I think that's more to do with the fact that Jokeres is a one-man band than anything else. I'd still play him. I just think we don't have. I don't think Tyler Walker is a better option for me.
Even despite his one-game renaissance that people really went to town over, despite the fact that there wasn't a great deal to it.
It reminds me a little bit of when Wagon came back into the team and was more involved because he was a bit more energetic, and yet the bar is so low. We're rating them at a completely different level to everybody else. Like, if the performance that Walker put in, I honestly looked at it and I couldn't see much difference to what Godden normally does. There's an element of enthusiasm and he'd win a couple of headers, but when he gets on the ball, it's rare that he does anything other than the absolute basics, and that's kind of the level that they're both at. So you're picking and choosing between the two. So I need more convincing by Tyler Walker. I need to see an attribute, any kind of attribute, and at the moment I can't see any. People say he's a good finisher, but we're really waiting for that as well.
Imogen, would you keep or get rid of either or both?
I would get rid of Walker because I think he's had long enough. I just don't think it's working. He probably needs a different club. I'm not going to say a different sport, just a different mindset. I'd actually forgotten about Waghorn. Do we get rid of him soon? What's his status?
I feel like he's out of contract in the summer.
Yeah. Oh, good. And then Godden, a tricky one. I don't think he and Jokeres failed to work completely. There've been some assists. There've been some reasonable link-up play, but and I hate to admit when Paul is right, but I think he's probably accurate to say that it's not the most attractive partnership that we've had under Mark.
It's not optimum, is it really?
No.
But I also think I can see what he's doing, because in lieu of having basically anybody, he has proven over the course of the last 2 seasons, Godden, that he is systemless or system resistant, in that occasionally he'll just score a goal. And I think we've had lots of players over the years, especially strikers, who, like, unless there's something going on, is they just are not involved in the game, or that they won't do anything. But at the least you can sort of, like, more last season, clearly, but that whilst I don't want to see them up top together, but I think the alternative, I guess, at the minute would be Ryan Howley, who I think has looked quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I just think that if I Mark, I'm looking at balance of probability, and I think if I'm already relying on Jokeres to do everything anyway, I might as well pop a nice goal scoring boy up next to him and just say to him, "Don't worry about anything. Just if the ball drops to you, just do a big poke on it, and then
Do a big
we'll see
goal
whether
and we'll be happy. Yeah.
do a big goal." You do have to wonder how Gyökeres feels about the division of labour there, don't you? Where kind of Robbins is like, I need you to do all the running, all the the big physical stuff. I'm going to be asking everybody to pass to you. And Matt, if you could just basically just hang around, if you could just stay near the goal as much as possible, you might be able to take all the glory if that's possible, like in the whole game.
Do you ever
Then he
think
turns
that,
to Tyler
Ben
Walker and
Wilson
says, "Why
gets...
can't you be more like that?"
Why can't you be more Look at his nice hair. Look at his nice hair.
Look at his lovely hair. It's so marriageable.
Nice hair. He's nice. Look at his cute hamster face.
Yeah. He's got a cute goal celebration and everything. What have you got? No.
He's a marketable footballer, isn't he, Godden? There is a large part of it is kind of he has done us a tremendous service.
Yeah.
Because I think when we signed him as well, I don't think anybody was terribly excited about him replacing Mark McNulty. But I think ultimately that we've done exceptionally better out of the deal, because I think we got $1 million for McNulty, didn't we? And then spent about 700,000 of it off Godden. I'm not convinced that McNulty would have scored the goals that Godden has.
No,
So
fired us promotion, didn't he?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, balance of probability in play and everything. He's been an absolutely outstanding signing. But I think at this point, when you're looking at what's going to be probably the world's largest squad overhaul outside of Nottingham, is even still you'd kind of be like, well, you're either going to be fourth choice or it might be time to go. While we are on the subject of squad overhaul, there's been a couple of players recently. So did anyone feel quite confused as to why Michael Rowe came on Saturday? Was McFadzean injured?
I think it's a pace thing all the time. I think Mark has got this idea that if there's ever any pace coming up against us in defence, his go-to move is to bring on Rose and try and counter it. And he's done it a few times this season, and that was kind of my thought on it. It was just kind of, what else can we do? And I don't know if they were quick as much as they were just alert and nippy, and it just wasn't quite working out for us. And I think it's more of a go-to move for him. And there was a lot that Mark had to kind of think through at half time the other day. And Don was talking about it. He wasn't sure whether the subs were quite the right thing to do. But I actually thought Howley was quite a smart move. One thing to kind of bridge the gap that we had. And he was trying his best to get involved, and he was sticking his leg out. And I am quite intrigued by him.
Yeah, I am, as a matter of fact.
And obviously Esbran Wilson as well.
He played all right.
Yeah, I just, that was the first time you've seen him a little bit sort of looser and not kind of as concerned, and maybe the nature of the game made it that way. But he looked very, very fluid on that left.
Very quickly, one of my highlights of the month was your options for past participles of the word glide when describing.
What started off as me not quite knowing what it was just became glowed, glided, glad. They all sound right to me.
You're right. You know what I mean? I don't know the answer, but when I looked through the list, I was like, they're all plausible. It's entirely possible that any of them could be right. On Howley, what do you find interesting about Howley?
I think, well, obviously his height is useful. Somebody with such a young face looking that tall is quite a benefit and a bonus. I think he's got a nice stride. That's a bit boring, but he has got something where he kind of gets his. There was a couple of moments where he got his leg there where you just didn't think it was going to happen. Which the more kind of controlled he gets during their match is going to be really useful. And I just think. I think there must be something. He's a man already, which is useful. And in matches where you probably need somebody just to kind of have a little bit more of a fight and a bit more presence than somebody like Jamie Allen might be able to give you. I think he becomes an option, which is something we were desperate for. I didn't expect it, because all we'd seen of him really in the first team was, I think it was earlier this season and back end of last season when he came on for 15 minutes against Forest, and he looked petrified. And that's always one of those moments where you're like, right, is that just a Ryan Hayes one-off, or is that something where they're going to be able to shake it off? And to be fair, he started that game out of nowhere the other week, and I thought he looked really good. and his little touches here and there. He's always turning his head to see what's going on around him. Yeah, I think he's definitely promising. Definitely promising.
I've been listening to Under the Cosh, the podcast
Yeah.
with John Parkin and whatever, and slightly off piste. I always think that podcast would be brilliant if they just edited out all of the bits with the hosts. Do you know what I mean? There was just completely take them out of it and just let the guest just answer questions that you'd have to like sort of imagine. But it's been really interesting over the last like handful of episodes of how obvious it is that becoming a professional footballer is almost entirely down to fortune, and that like I think about Ben Stevenson an awful lot. I don't really understand how Ben Stevenson isn't playing at least in the Championship at this point. But there's so many different factors that go into being a professional footballer. And I think when we gave Josh Eccles a 4-year contract, I think a few people were raising eyebrows. And now you'd go and go, what? No, probably that's someone that I could see being here for the next 4 years, either as a sort of a bit part player or someone that could improve to the point where they'd get up to Chiefs level. And Howley, you look at and think, I don't know what is all right about you, but I could equally see you becoming a fixture in the first team next season, or be playing in non-league tomorrow. Like you just don't. It's impossible to know, isn't it? But I agree with you. I think he's got something about him. I think as the other thing is that because we've spent the last best part of 10 years in in League One or League Two before this, is when players have been breaking through and they've looked good in the lower leagues. But Howley is looking good in the Championship. You'd have to think at the very least that if his career didn't take off at Cov, he's probably still going to have a really good league career, isn't he?
You'd like to think, wouldn't you? And I think you get it just right there. It's this sort of imperceptible thing which you can't quite put your finger on. There's so many different sort of facets to what makes a good player. And Stevenson's a great example because pound for pound, he is an excellent player. And yet I always thought when he was in our team, for whatever reason, looked weaker, even though his performances were good, but yet it didn't quite bring the team up. And yet, Eccles is another example of somebody who we hardly lose when he's in the team. And even if he's not necessarily playing well or what you perceive to be well, there's something which seems to benefit the team or where his area on the pitch. And if anybody ever gets to the answer to why that is about certain players and why it isn't, is they're going to be a very, very rich person, because the stuff which you expect doesn't always mean that you're going to have a good career. And like Shipley is another example of somebody who wasn't really, in the early days, he wasn't really doing much. And then over time, he just gradually started to be able to finish. And then he looked great in League One and he came up to the Championship and he just wasn't really up to much in the Championship, but another player who's probably going to just have a decent career because he's got something about him and a wand of a left foot, obviously.
Tom Bailey said that he wasn't anywhere near the best player at Cov when he didn't he? When we spoke to him, he was just like, I was just sort of middling, and at one point looked like I was going to get released and just decided to stick it out, and then all of a sudden got thrown in, scored, and then
I'd love to have him back.
I'm not the linchpin of what's going on. Imogen, how good do you think Eccles is?
How good do I think Eccles is? I don't know. Do you know what, Joey? I've never really thought deeply about it.
It's fair enough, isn't it, really?
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just thinking about, let me answer the question that I want to answer rather than the one you actually posed. Just thinking about how prescient Mark's judgment has been actually on, I think that's probably one of his greatest strengths in terms of what he has, the decisions he's made, particularly close season, on the players that he gets rid of and the players that he brings, not necessarily in from outside, but he brings through the ranks. I think that's one of my favourite things about him, is that the number of times that he's got rid of players and I've gone, what's he doing that for? Why? And then you look at half a season down the road and you think, actually, that makes perfect sense that he did that. It's almost like he's really good at his job. But in terms of Eccles,
just very quickly on that, which I think is a really, really good point. Is there anyone that you can think of that we have lost outside of the obvious ones of kind of like you'd have Ostergaard back, but then
Mm.
he's fairly happy in Serie A or whatever. Is there anyone that Robbins you feel like has let go that has gone on to do better than?
What, his yaps down?
Yeah, Johnson. I'm not even as prolific as Johnson Clark Harris has been. Like, I don't look at him and think, God, what we could have got if we'd have kept him.
No. I mean, I think Bayliss is a good example of I loved him as a player and I missed him when he went. But
you don't look
at what he's doing now and think we'd be desperate for that in our team.
He might be back in the Championship next, but yeah.
But also, he was £2 million worth of signing from a League One team. Do you know what I mean? It's not like Robbins disposed of him and then made a mistake. Like the players that Robbins has let go, like through choice, have not come back to bite us in any extent. Even our young players haven't gone on to be anywhere else. So you're right. I'd never thought about that before. But it's not like, do you know what I mean? Like we've ditched players and then all of a sudden you've been like, oh, that was a big mistake. Like sometimes you see.
Yeah, I think saying through choice is an interesting one because he probably would want Hyam back.
Oh Christ, he'd want I'd have Hyam back now. I mean, I don't know whether I'd put him in ahead of McNally, but I'd have him back.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I'm pretty sure that wasn't what he wanted from it to sell Hyam. I mean, of the ones that he's let go, no, I don't think so. I can't think of anyone that's gone on to do a job that would have improved our team.
That's the key thing, isn't it? Like, the Clark Harris one is the example of somebody who's gone on and done well, but we've done well enough without him. There's nothing you never look back and think, oh, we missed JCH. We just don't.
Yeah, and sometimes like players and managers are just one thing at one club and one thing at another. And I think we saw enough of him to know that he had ample opportunity and he did well. Like I don't harbour any kind of grudge against him, but that clearly whatever he found at Peterborough was what he needed, and I don't think that existed at Cardiff, did it? It's just interesting how that goes down sometimes, isn't it? I think I'd like to ask one more question of both of you, and then I think it's time to give the guys what they want and move on to the Pilford game from myself. Is because of the nature of the fact that we've gone monthly, I think we will have started to talk about Luke McNally, but I don't think we will have finished talking about Luke McNally. I do think it bears some scrutiny. Neil, you have pointed out at one point that maybe a couple of weeks ago, since he started playing for us, he was the highest rated person on the Who Scored ratings. That
rating system, yes.
Which you seem to place a great deal of faith in, but
I place more of a faith in humanity, not being able to work it out. His performances, and I think it was really telling the other day after his quite ropey performance against Stoke. Mark called out and said, that's the first time we've seen McNally like that. It's very, very obvious difference in form where he's just been so sturdy in everything he does, and we were hoping he would fill that void because we were struggling in defence. We were kind of shoehorning people into positions who weren't necessarily playing well, and having somebody to come in and be that dominant alongside and then a returning McFadden, it's been huge for us. And I rate him because all the attributes I see from him are just top quality, and in a way he reminds me of Hyam in the sense where he seems, apart from the other day where it didn't quite go his way, but he's up to that point he'd seemed very metronomic. Like these things he was able just to go through. His tackling is just incredible, and when you look at the stats you see just how much good stuff he does on a game by game basis. And there's a lot of chit chat about what his career looks like, certainly over the summer, and I think that's all going to depend on partially whether Burnley want to keep hold of him or not, because they obviously bought him as a talent. He's still young, and then also if we had any money to throw at it whatsoever, and if he's enjoyed his time with us, and if something goes well for us in the summer, or if we look likely to do something next year, I mean, you'd want to buy him, wouldn't you? I can't see any reason why you wouldn't. At least put your hat in the ring. You've got to. I mean, I don't know how much that would be, whether you pay them the same money they paid, which is $2 million, or whether he's now got a higher value. But if Dom Hyam's costing, $2 million, surely he's at about the same level.
the value thing is a relative thing, isn't it? Because ultimately they bought him for £2 million based on the idea that he would be a player that would play regularly for them in the Championship. If they
Was
go
it that?
up, well, they must have done, because otherwise, why on earth would you pay so much money for even for Burnley with the parachute payments and everything? You
Well, it's just
just
that Preston bought Preston bought Bayliss for money and were never going to play it. So you don't know how much money these teams have and whether they can afford to buy assets. I don't know.
maybe you're right, and I guess they bought two. Did they bring in two centre backs in January as well?
I think they did.
Either way, maybe I'm wrong with it. I don't know whether his value skyrockets as a result of Burnley going up if he's not had any part to play
Yeah,
whatsoever in their
you'd hope not
promotion.
anyway. You'd hope not.
Imogen, how good McNally?
Very good, bar the Stoke game where I think you said, Joey, he was not so good. But no one came out of that with any credit at all. So maybe we just write it off as an aberration. But I love him. He's great.
Correct.
The only reflection I had on the Stoke game after the event, and I think possibly as a bit of confirmation bias because I like McNally and want to be kind to him, is the first player out of all 11 who were fairly terrible that struck me as being really wretched that day was Dabo. So I'm not trying to have a big go at Dabo, but like in the first half an hour, that was the first player that was like, there is something really, like, he's not dealing with this game well at all. And I think it didn't help either of them on that side that Campbell, Sterling and Brown linked up so well together and were so mobile and so fluid, and that Sterling kept coming inside and overloaded the pair of them. And I did think a little bit about how people this season have been like, God, hasn't Trent Alexander-Arnold got worse? And I don't think he has got worse. I just don't think he's been put in the positions he's been put in previously this season. I think normally what has happened is that between Fabinho and Van Dijk, they've done all of that work to protect Alexander-Arnold. And I do think it was interesting with Stoke, to both a sort of pro and a con for McNally, is the pro is you kind of go, he had a really terrible game, but that he wasn't given anywhere near the sort of protection you would hope for and was terribly overrun by three players who were able to go out there and largely have him to deal with. The second thing is you kind of go, but actually, I wonder if other teams might go, we could probably do that. And then he doesn't look like his aura is kind of shattered because he's mortal now. And you kind of go, well, actually, if we stick two players really far out there, then we might be able to turn him inside out. So it'll be interesting to see how, as much as we talked about form as a team is going to be kind of, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting to see whether that is an odd blip for him or whether there's been a chink in his armor finally exposed. But we'll wait and see.
But a lot of it was in his head. But you could see there was a nervousness.
Oh, he didn't know what the fuck he was doing, by the end.
It came out of nowhere, hadn't it? He'd not been used to it. Like everything had been reasonably easy for him, and then suddenly it's like, no, this game can be hard, and they were overrunning, like you say, but they were all like that. And this is the other thing: they were all like that, and in their own little bubbles of uselessness and scaredy catness, they were doing the things you don't normally see from them. And it's like you say, it's how do they shake that? Is that something that's going to? It's really important. Like, they're footballers; they have to be able to shake it. You have to be resilient, and sometimes you have games where it's a lot harder than the other. You've got to kind of step up.
Yeah, but he's got Kyle as his mentor, so it'll be fine.
I mean, what a mentor! What an absolute another player that Paul thinks has had no bearing on our improvement recently.
Come on here and say that, Paul.
I sometimes think it's better when he's not here, so that I can give his terrible opinions with the sort of disrespect they deserve.
It's the way you tell him, Joey. It's just like.
Well, I mean, it's just very difficult for me to like. I'll see we play squash, and I'll see him, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I've done the stats. McFadzean isn't actually improving the team," and I'll be like, really? I don't know whether you can do that. Right? Okay, we're going to throw in some quiz because. At this point, I think we assume it's what the people want, but it certainly hasn't had good feedback. And this one is called "Play Your Coventry City Goal Scorers Right." It's a snappy title, as I'm sure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the name of a player. Then you're going to take it in turns. Neil, I'm going to ask you to go first. I'm going to keep a very rudimentary scoring system, and all I need you to tell me is. Has the latter player scored more or less goals than the former player. Does that make sense? So if
Yeah.
I said
Yes.
to you, God, who hasn't scored goals for us? Magnus Hedman, and then I say Mark McNulty, you would say higher, and you would be correct to say higher. Okay?
Yes, understood.
Neil,
Mhm.
you're going to start. The first player is, and this is a bit of an all right one. It's Clary Borton, who scored 189 goals.
Thank you.
Did Dion Dublin score more or less?
League goals are we talking about here, Joey?
We're the only ones that matter. Yeah, non-penalty league. All of these are non-penalty league goals.
Plus some XG in there.
Yeah.
Lower.
The correct answer is, of course, lower. Imogen. Dion Dublin scored 72 goals for Coventry City. Did Cyril
Did
Regis
he?
score more or less?
Fewer.
Oh, what, is my grammar not good enough for you, is it?
See, I
The
didn't want to point it out directly. But...
you're correct, of course. Cyril Regis, Neil, scored 62 goals for Coventry. By the way, all of these were done when I did this Sporkle quiz in a job that I had very little to do during back in 2017. So if
Cool.
players have gone past that point,
Yeah.
then unfortunately you're out of luck. Did Gary McSheffrey score higher or lower than 62 goals from Cyril Regis?
Higher.
The answer, of course, is higher. He scored 72 goals. Did Darren Huckabee score higher or lower than 72 goals, Imogen?
Lower.
Lower. The answer is 34. Neil, did Brian Kilcline score higher or lower than 34 goals?
Lower.
The answer is, of course, higher with 35 goals for the club.
Bloody tricked me, didn't you?
Did Imogen, Mickey Ginn, score higher or lower than 35 goals of Brian Kilcline?
Lower.
The answer is, of course, higher with 45.
No way.
Neil, David Smith, higher or lower than Mickey Ginn?
Fuck is David
Low.
Smith?
Lower.
45. The answer is lower. He scored 19 goals.
No one's heard of him.
Imogen, I mean, people in their 40s and 50s, Imogen, are going hopping mad at this point.
Don't care.
Guy scored 19 goals for the club.
Come now.
In how many seasons?
Could be loads. We'll get our fact checkers to check. Imogen, 19 goals for David Smith. Keith Houchin, higher or lower?
You sure you did this in 2017, Joey?
Do you remember Keith Houchin?
Yes. Yes, I know who he is. What was it?
Higher
How
or
many
lower
goals?
than David Smith's 19?
Oh, higher.
The answer is lower. Did Dave Bennett score higher or lower than Keith Houchin's 12?
Higher.
The answer is higher. Did Stern John score higher or lower than Dave Bennett's 34?
Surely lower.
The answer, of course, is lower. 28 for Stern John. Did Patrick Sufo score higher or lower than 28?
Lower.
The Magician. It is lower. Did Steve Froggatt score higher or lower than Patrick Sufo's 10?
Oh, only 10. Lower.
It was, in fact, higher.
No way.
Yeah,
I
and he
remember
would have had
two of those. God.
Wolves?
Hang on.
Possibly, yeah.
He'd
have had a great time doing it, by the way.
Are we talking about goals for Cov or goals all around?
Goals for Cov.
All right. He scored more than 10. I didn't realise that.
He scored 15 goals for us, apparently.
Wow.
Or at least he did on Wikipedia in 2017 when I was hungover in work. Then whose go is it now? That's just Neil's go, isn't it?
Me.
Did Reader Johnson score more or less than Steve Froggatt's 15?
Lower.
The answer is lower.
Are you counting own goals in that?
No, I'm not counting own goals in that. Did Jordan Clark score higher or lower than Reed Johnson's 8?
Lower.
The answer is, of course, lower. Did Viral Moldovan score higher or lower than Jordan Clark's 3?
One lower.
The answer is lower with 2. Kevin Richardson, higher or lower than Viral Moldovan's 2?
Lower.
Okay, now I think of all of the bad bits of this podcast, this is going to be the worst because the timer ran out on the Sporkle quiz, and I think I know the answer.
Classic Ella. Just Google it.
Think I know the answer, but what I will do is I will refresh. Then I'm going to click through until we get to that question again. And what I think
the
is
suspense.
Yeah, it's big. Maybe people might like to go and get a cup of tea or have a bath at this point, and then they could join us back by the time.
No one's still listening, Joey.
No, it's fine. A lot of people might say, "Why not edit this out?" But it's impossible with a podcast. It's broadcast live and can't be altered. It's the whole nature of a podcast. Did you say higher or lower than?
God, I can't remember. Whatever the right answer is.
Don't worry about it because there's 19 more questions to go. Would you like to go higher or lower than?
I think I said lower.
You would be right. Kevin Richards scored 1. Neil, this is leaving you in a difficult predicament here. John Fleck, higher or lower than 1?
Higher.
It's higher, of course. It's higher. Come on, guys. Callum Ball, Imogen, higher or lower than John Fleck's 8?
Lower.
It's lower. It is lower. Cody McDonald, higher or lower than Callum Ball's 3? We know this.
Did you ask me something?
Cody McDonald, higher or lower than Callum Ball's 3? I think
higher.
This is the easiest one we've done so far. Yes,
England,
of course. Cody McDonald. Cody McDonald scored 50 goals for Coventry, I think.
Did he? 5-0?
No, he scored.
That's incorrect.
He scored 8 goals. Imogen, David Ball, higher or lower than Cody McDonald's 8 goals?
Lower.
I think we'll do 3 more because there genuinely are 14 more of these.
Okay, yeah, let's curb it.
Neil, Trondheim Saltvet, higher or lower than David Ball's 6?
You went through a little period. Oh God, I think it's going to be tight, but I'll say lower.
The answer is lower, 3. Tom Bayliss, higher or lower than 3?
Higher.
Of course, it's higher. And I imagine Tom Bayliss still listens to this, doesn't he, after being on? So hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
It's great that you still listen. And then finally, Neil, John Williams, higher or lower than Tom Bayliss' 8?
Lower.
John Williams with 11 goals.
No, he didn't. Do not believe this.
Well, oh yes, he did. Final scores?
Go on then.
Neil with 10 correct answers. And you had some real gifts in there, didn't you? I mean, the first one.
The first one, maybe. Maybe the first one was easy.
And maybe the higher or lower than 1 for Kevin Richardson, I think was let's describe it as gettable. So Imogen, for you to get 8, I thought was a sterling effort, quite frankly. But of course,
thanks, mate.
The winner in the most Pyrrhic of senses was Neil this week.
Thank you,
that's world class. Right, okay, so any final thoughts, recollections, musings, or life lessons from the last month before we tell people to go and enjoy the rest of their lives?
I'm more interested to know what the next month's podcast is going to sound like, because we're in the playoffs by then. Could be, Joey.
I tell you what's going to be interesting is if we can fit in a podcast pre-Middlesbrough, it's all to play for.
Yeah, I think it
is.
Because
if it's not all to play for, there's a very strong chance we will be waiting for that Middlesbrough game to finish. I don't think we'll need to. If we can't make the playoffs pre that game, it is going to seem like a stretch to do a whole month podcast on just the Middlesbrough game.
Yeah, let's just wait. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. You're right. It's riveting, I would say. So yeah, this has been a blast, but let's see what the next month holds. Finally, just before we leave, Neil, percentage prediction for promotion?
100.
100%. That's what I thought it would have been. Imogen?
Yeah, 50-50.
It's been a pleasure. Neil, God bless you. Good night.
Likewise.
Goodbye to you, Imogen.
Happy birthday, Josh Eccles.
Happy birthday, Josh Eccles. A man who plays and looks like he grew up in a carnival. And goodbye and good night to you, listeners. Bye.